Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. You can join our community of storytellers by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, signing up for my newsletter, following me on Instagram, and more. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance. Episode 58 of The Human Experience is Alisa's story. This is part 2 of Alisa's story. If you haven't listened to part 1, please go back and listen before continuing with this episode. Though Alisa was rescued from her husband's violent kidnapping and assault, she still had an incredibly difficult journey ahead of her, which included trudging through the healing process while also fighting for her children and going through the re-traumatizing process of her husband's trial. Alisa has made it her mission to speak up for other victims and survivors, pointing out the gaps in the system that allowed this to happen in the first place. A trigger warning before we begin. This episode contains graphic conversations around domestic violence, physical violence, rape, and suicide. Please proceed with care. This episode was recorded in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
So he then decided to represent himself because they wouldn't let him fire his other last attorney. Well, because then he's representing himself. They had to give him his writing privileges because he's representing himself. He has to file things. He has to be able to write things. What does he do? He writes letters. And the second oldest, the one that took the longest to come back home, he wrote letters to him, and he went and met up with the family member who was given these letters and brought them directly to me. So we gave them to the prosecutor. And again, reprimanded, but what can we do at this point? He's representing himself. We can't take away his writing privileges, right. But he's witness tampering. So finally, he tries to delay. And they're like, we're not delaying. He went through 2 different judges. We're on our 3rd judge. And they're like, this is going to trial. This is happening. So I was in the room during jury selection. Now, one of the things that they have in Florida that they do not have here in Pennsylvania is they have Marsy's Law. It's the Victim's Bill of Rights. Now, in Pennsylvania, I really want to start talking about how important it is to give these rights to the victims. I was able on multiple occasions to address the courts. Over that 6-year period of me being in the room for all of those different hearings, watching him play the system, I wanted to be on the record. I want to be heard.
Absolutely.
And when it came down to jury selection, I have the right to be present for everything. And they were like, well, that doesn't mean jury selection. I said, yes, it does. I am going to be in the room. What accommodations are you making? Well, we can put you in another room and you can watch it. And I said, no, my accommodations are going to be that I'm in that room. And you are going to have to figure out how to make it discreet enough that the jury selection doesn't realize what's going on. But I will be in that room. So Marsy's Law reached out to the state attorney and said, she reached out to us and this is going to happen. And they were like, we've never had a victim even request this, but we will make accommodations. So I'm glad I was in the room. When jury selection, the judge asked him if he wanted to continue to represent himself or if he wanted to have standby counsel. Now, they knew this may have been a tactic that he was trying, was to try to get the last lawyer fired. They refused to release the last lawyer. So the last lawyer had to stay as standby counsel. This guy knows everything about the case. He can't say he's not prepared. So Trevor decides, yeah, I'll take the guy. Just hoping that then the attorney's going to say, I'm not ready. And that's exactly what happened. I haven't been on this case for 6 months.
Yeah.
He's been self-representing himself. I'm not ready. And they said, sorry, he did that to himself. That is his fault.
Oh, finally.
Yep. So at jury selection, he has an attorney. Everybody stands up in the front. The judge reads the charges. And we're in a room of 60 potential jurors. And they read the charges. And they said, is there a reason why anyone cannot sit on this case? 11 charges. All of these women's hands go shooting up. And I'm watching in disbelief. Now, I have my victim advocate from the court, and I have my victim advocate from the domestic violence organization on either side of me. And I'm watching as all of these women are saying, I cannot sit on this jury because I was raped. I cannot sit on this jury because I went through domestic violence. Then we saw a younger woman. She was probably early 20s. And she said, I can't sit on this jury because I watched my parents' marriage unravel and my dad do these things to my mother. And then all these young men's hands go up. I can't sit on this jury because I too am a child that went through witnessing this. They had to go back to the jury pool several times and request more jurors.
Wow. If that doesn't speak volumes.
And I was in the room and witnessed it happen, because if I had not been in that room and witnessed it firsthand, I would have looked at that jury and looked at the prosecutor and said, what is wrong with you? And not realizing the magnitude of this. He ended up with an all-male juror. To say he had a juror of his peers is the understatement of the year. Those men were almost, maybe 2 were older than my husband. 1 was Asian, but all the rest looked just like him.
White men.
So the next day, we started the trial because jury selection took an entire day. And opening statements, when the prosecutor said what this case was about, and you kind of looked at the juror as they were kind of puzzled and thinking that, oh, this is probably just an overreach. Those were kind of the expressions on their face. Like, if this woman can prove any of this. Yeah. The defense attorney was still on for opening statements and basically said she willingly went with him. There was consent all the way around. And he was married to this woman. They had 5 children together. She is still his wife at this point. And that was pretty much that. Then we went into the first witness was the Walgreens employee. Like, let's just give them the shock right off the bat. We have an eyewitness of this. Yes. Few other witnesses went, and then I was the end of day 1.
How did the Walgreens employee go over with everybody?
He was very similar to the guys on the jury. Maybe in his mid to late 30s. So a little bit younger than most of them. And, white guy, nice full beard. But yeah, and he answered the questions. The question was given. He was just kind of a cut and dry, yes, no, kind of didn't elaborate things like most men. They're not talkers. So you don't get much from them. Yeah. But then when I went, you kind of couldn't really read their expressions. It was more or less like, oh, this is the story. All right. Okay. All right. Well, let's see what kind of evidence there is of this story. There wasn't any real shock and awe on their faces. It wasn't like that. It was, some were taking some notes, but there didn't seem to be real interest. And it was live streaming. It was on Law and Crime. Court TV did not pick it up initially. So it was not on their channel, but it was on Law and Crime, and it was on YouTube. So at the end of day one, I was still on the stand and finishing up the story, like I just told you, about the kidnapping. And the start of day two, the second day, the full second day, I'm on the stand finishing up with the prosecutor, and the prosecutor rests early in the day. Now for the defense. The defense attorney stands up and says, Judge, now the jury goes on a recess because we're giving them a break before the defense comes up. And the defense attorney stands up and says, Judge, I've just been informed that I have been fired. He wishes to represent himself. I am sitting on the witness stand.
Oh my gosh.
My kids are sitting in the waiting room area. There's a waiting area, but then there's a room off of the witness area, waiting area. They're sitting in there with Jeff and my dad. And my brother and my victim advocates are in the room, in the courtroom. And I had already prepared myself because, knowing my ex-husband, I knew him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he decides to represent himself. So the jury's break that was supposed to be 15 minutes is not 15 minutes now. Mm-hmm. The judge apologizes. I know I told you a 15-minute break. You will understand all in a minute. And okay. So they come back in, and he says, Mr. Summers has decided to represent himself. It is his right. And the look of horror in Florida, they have 6 jurors and 2 alternates.
Oh, okay.
So if I had died, they would have 12 jurors and 2 alternates.
Interesting.
But because I did not die, you get 6.
I just don't even know what to say to that.
Because people ask me, why do you have 6 jurors? And I go, because I didn't die.
Okay. That's a thing.
And we're a death penalty state. So because I didn't die, no death penalty is on the table.
Okay.
So we need 12 jurors to have the death penalty.
Interesting.
And they all have to be unanimous. So they ask them, in that case, they ask them guilty or not guilty, but then they also have to deliberate on death penalty or not death penalty. So the horror on these men's face, and it was like they all leaned in now, like, oh. And, we're all told you cannot, during the trial, you cannot see what's going on in the news or on the internet or anything like that. So in my mind, though, I'm like, I know this is the crazy part, that right now we're breaking the internet, right? And I can't watch it, but I know this is occurring. I know it's happening right now. And sure enough, this room that had been empty, all of these lawyers are filling in. And I'm like, how is anyone actually having court in other rooms right now? Or they were like, hey, we're all waiting. We're all going on a recess right now. You take your turn for recess, then I'll take my turn for recess. We got to go. So the 2 prior judges that had been on this case, both of them came multiple times. I guess whenever they were done their dockets or whatever, I saw them. So many people in the courthouse knew me from the dependency case when my kids were in the system. All of those lawyers, all those players all knew me, and then you have all these the criminal trials. I had the divorce trial. I mean, I had to get permission from a different court to be able to enter my ex-husband's house to get my belongings and my kids' belongings out of that house.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I had just so many court things going on all at the same time. So, yeah, it was crazy. And then the questions he asked me, that was even the crazier things, because like people watched it and you raped me. You broke into my home when I was sleeping. You tied me up. You attacked me. I was fighting you off for 2 hours as you were pinning me down and throwing me around the room. Finding out that you had my children drive your car 45 minutes in the middle of the night. Like, crazy stuff. The things I would still to this day, I could find out, somebody could reach out to me and say, your ex-husband did this, and I would have no idea about any of it. I'm still to this day finding out things that man did. I'm not surprised by any of it.
Sure.
It's so crazy. But there's so many times where the manipulation, it causes you to be in such a way that you cannot see. You have blinders on and you cannot see. Yeah. And the best example of that is my 2 older children that I homeschooled, poured all of this love, devotion into them, protected them from this crazy man, that then they were manipulated in such a way that they can't see truth and lies by him. He manipulated the police. He manipulated the courts. He manipulated smart businessmen across the country. Of course, me, a stay-at-home mom with 5 children who's homeschooling them and knows nothing what he is doing, of course he's going to be able to manipulate me. I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
And the same goes for my kids. They were innocent children.
Right. I mean, and this is something I think your story is obviously so extreme, and there are plenty of stories out there like it, but across the spectrum of domestic violence, especially when you're talking about spousal or romantic relationship and even parent-child, is that you are entering into a relationship as somebody who is willing to be vulnerable with somebody else. And you are entering into that in good faith that the counterpart is also going to be vulnerable with you. And that's not what happens. You get somebody faking it and manipulating you, but you're walking down this road unaware until it's too late.
Exactly. It is, it is a vulnerable thing to let that guard down. And that's when people hear that I got remarried. They're like, how were you able to? And I said, it was really a God thing. I really had to give all of this over to God. God put the exact man in my path, in the exact timing and the exact parameters or specification for me to be undeniable that he is that man. And I'll give you an example. I'm living outside of Tampa in a Tampa suburb, originally from a suburb of Philadelphia here in Westchester, right? I went to Garnet Valley, so I'm not from Westchester. I'm from Garnet Valley. Right? So my husband reminds me of this. He's like, hold on, your Delco is coming out there.
I mean, somebody was going to say it. You just got to cut it off before somebody else says it.
Well, when the trial was going on, people were like, what is this woman's accent?
Oh my gosh.
Where is this accent from? She's not a New Yorker, that's for sure, but it's something like that.
Yeah, was Mayor of Easttown out yet? Because everyone knows who Delco is now because of that show.
Delco. So the way I met Jeff is I'm outside of Tampa suburb, 6 months into this awful divorce with this awful man, scared to death of him. Kidnapping hasn't happened yet, right? I meet a man in a Phillies t-shirt. And the conversation goes like this. Phillies, I'm from Philadelphia. I said, well, outside the city. And he goes, oh, me too. He's like, I'm from Westchester. And I was like, get the heck out of here. What high school did you go to? He goes, Henderson. I go, I went to Garnet Valley. And I said, do you know this person? Do you know this person? Do you know this person? We had tons of mutual friends.
No. Oh my gosh.
So what gets even more ironic is he brings up a name of a guy I went to high school with. And I said, no, I went to high school with Joe. How do you know Joe? He goes, oh, he and I worked together. And I said, wait a second. In high school, he was working at the gun range, and he is still to this day working in the same gun range. Did you work at Target Master? He is like, yeah, I was a range officer for 10 years.
Target Master, like on 202?
So I'm scared to death of my ex-husband, who has just recently held me at knife point.
Oh, my word.
Who has already broken into my home, but has not kidnapped me, but he broke into my home and like terrorized me. And the day I meet Jeff is the day my ex-husband broke into my house.
Wow.
And so I come home from work that day to my front door wide open. And I'm scared. I can't even go into the house. The front door's open. I call Jeff and I said, my front door's open and I am waiting up the street at the Lowe's. Can you help me change the locks on my door? And he was like, yes. So he came armed and everything. And he said, you know, when he came and saw the condition of my house, knew that my ex-husband had held me at knife point, knew the police didn't believe me, that if I called on this, they're not going to believe me on this either.
Yeah.
He said, I don't think you're safe. And I can stay and sleep on your couch. Now, I am this Christian woman who has been, you know, indoctrinated into my head over and over and over again. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
That is not possible. That is not something that can happen. And I was like, oh, no, you cannot sleep on my couch.
Not even if your life depends on it.
Not if my life depended on it. I said, we have to call my brother. So we call my brother in Pennsylvania and say, hey, there's this guy that I met because he was wearing a Phillies t-shirt and he knows all these people and he worked at Target Master and he just changed the locks on my door and he just offered to sleep on my couch. But I can't do that because what will people think? My brother said to me, what you need right now is more important than what other people are going to perceive.
I really like your brother.
So my brother said, let me talk to this guy. So he slept on my couch that night. Nothing happened. And then I said, okay, I'm okay now. You changed my locks. I think I'm okay. And he says, well, I'm going to call every day, make sure you're okay. And he did. And then when I went missing, the police showed up on his front door. And he's the one that got in touch with my family because the police did not get in touch with my family. Yeah. So he is amazing. And so that, and then even after the kidnapping happened, he stuck around.
That, I mean, truly amazing.
Yes. So he's been through all of this. Me going through triggers and knowing what my triggers are, knowing that there are, you know, times that I'm not okay and times when I am okay, knowing that I wrote the book, that the book's in editing. The book was a big release. There was a lot of triggers throughout the year of writing the book.
I imagine.
And I waited till after the trial happened, which I'm so thankful now because the book runs parallel. The kidnapping and the trial are happening simultaneously.
Oh, interesting.
Because you have this climax through it of me telling the story and then jumping back in my inner thoughts of what was going through my mind as all these things were happening, whether I be in the moment in the kidnapping or in the moment in the courtroom. And all of that. So yeah, there are some moments from the trial, which you can watch the trial on YouTube. Court TV picked it up the following week because it ended up being a watched trial.
Okay.
Because he started representing himself. It was like true crime junkies started being like, oh my gosh, did you hear of this?
Okay. Now, have you done true crime podcasts?
I have not.
That's so interesting that that hasn't been, I mean, have you been asked and you haven't wanted to?
No, they've done podcasts about me where the people are talking. Like there's two
that's
sisters.
so surreal.
I think they're two sisters or two friends, and one heard the story. One loves true crime and one doesn't. So one told the story and the other one knew, and they're like, "Did she die?" Well, you have to hold on. Where were the kids?
That must be so surreal to like hear other people talking about your story and narrating it. And not having like control of that even.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
Again, I'm using that word. I don't know if that's the word you would use to describe that. But so he questioned you himself.
He did. But the reason why I don't think I've been asked to do podcasts is because that Delco comes in.
I think that's even better reason.
You know, you get excited and it's the hands start going. Yeah. You start talking fast.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I'm a fan. So, no, it's all good. But that's so interesting that, I mean, it just goes to show how far gone these abusers are and how invincible they think they are. That he like the hubris it takes to represent yourself on 11 charges with evidence. Like it is unreal.
Oh, so the evidence, we have the Walgreens guy. We have the 3 confessions, the written from the car, the video that went to the iCloud. And when he was taken to the hospital, they did a audio recording of him admitting all of it. But he wanted that one thrown out because he felt that it was a coerced confession because they had given him stitches.
Oh, okay. It is just ridiculous. I mean, how do you even, again, just the arrogance to push a trial when you yourself have confessed in both a written form and video and audio? Like, how did he even explain any of that away?
Yeah, it was just that, well, his defense attorney said that he shouldn't be charged with attempted murder because he stopped.
Oh, great. I just,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So it's funny then because when he started to represent himself, people were like, this is what gaslighting is on full display.
Right?
He's like, you agreed to go with me. I begged for you not to kill me.
Yeah.
Who packed your suitcase? You packed my suitcase because I had no feeling in my arms and legs from being suffocated.
Right. You know that attempted murder thing? That was the first time. Actually, not even. I mean, but whatever. Semantics.
We've lost track at this point.
How many times have you actually attempted to kill me?
Yeah.
Wow. So how many more days did the trial last?
So because he decided to represent himself, the prosecutor decided to cut almost everybody and just keep all of the really important information. Now, the video of him came up multiple times, right? And I leaned over to the victim advocate at one point that the court assigned to me. She was with me through the whole thing. And so was my DV advocate was with me through the whole thing. I had the same prosecutor for 6 years. I had everybody stayed the same. The judges changed, the defense changed, but everybody else stayed the same for me. Even the prosecutor had actually moved departments, but she kept this one case.
I love that.
She was amazing. So, what was I thinking? Oh, how many days?
Yeah.
So she was just like, I don't need to drag this trial out. And it went from 150 witnesses, I think, to like 15.
Wow.
Yes. And so he got up and cross-examined me. Then he cross-examined the kids. The 2 girls are the ones that they used. They had, the strongest testimonies and the strongest witness statements to give. They witnessed the most. Bryn was 7 at the time, and she could recall more of it than the 5-year-old boy that was in bed with me.
Sure.
And then Arden with the planning, and they had all these records of the text exchange. They had WhatsApp between him and her leading up to all this.
Did the prosecution put them on the stand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because that's the only way he could question them, right?
Nope. So he had Jeff on my new husband.
What?
So he couldn't come into the room. He had my dad. So my dad couldn't come into the room. So that's why they sat out in the witness area with the kids while they waited for them to be called.
Wow.
And so when Trevor decided to represent himself, and the prosecutor, started dwindling down her witnesses. They asked, who Trevor was going to call as his witnesses. They asked, are you going to call Jeff? Are you going to call Walt, her dad? And he said, no, I'm not. And she says, well, can they come into the room? And the judge said, yes, if they're being released as witnesses, they can come into the room. So at that point, they were allowed to come in.
Okay.
But it wasn't until after he started representing himself. Jeez. So, being that it was an all-male juror, I said that also was a saving grace of how many days it was. Because, if there were women on there, they would not be going late into the night every single night on this trial.
Yeah.
We did this from 8 to 8 every day.
Wow.
Yes. They fed them, during they were not sequestered, but because the men decided that, yes, they asked them, how late can you guys go? And they said, we'll go as late as you guys want to go. And they said, we'll go from 8 to 8.
Yeah, women could not.
No.
Men are like, you'll watch the kids, right?
Yeah. Like, you've got to be home to a certain time to pick up the kid and get him to this sport and get him to this. And, you still have other things other than work. Like, yeah, your job is going to pay you for being on jury duty, but that doesn't stop there.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
So we got it done in 5 days.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
What would have been probably a month trial ended up being a 5-day trial, but the evidence was so strong.
Yeah. I mean, it really should not have even gone to trial.
Right.
But the level of delusion is just amazing. So how long did the jury deliberate?
So they had not had lunch that last day yet.
God forbid.
So we ended up stopping at 2:00. So we went right through lunchtime because we knew it was dwindling down.
Gotcha.
And so they were like, we will feed you as soon as we get through closing statements. Oh, we had gotten through closing statements that morning. And then jury instructions are boring. Oh my goodness. I was in the room for probably about 15 minutes of the hundreds of pages of jury instructions. And I was like, I know I'm allowed to be in this room, but I choose not to because this is so boring. So by the time they were done with the jury instructions, it was almost 2:00. So they gave it over to the jury at 2:00, but they gave them food. So I really think they probably didn't start deliberating right away because they were probably all like, oh my gosh, we can finally talk about this. Let it process, let it sink in. And it was amazing because into the jury's hand, the 2 alternates were released. They didn't know they were alternates.
Oh, okay.
So those guys knew it was going to be quick. So they didn't want to go far. And the prosecutor told us not to go far. They're not waiting for you when the jury comes back.
Yeah.
We got to go. So we had somebody run down and get us food, and we were just sitting in on that floor in the waiting area. So the 2 alternate jurors are sitting in a room off of that big waiting area. But we're all just kind of sitting and it was a big group of us sitting and hanging out, talking and everything. And the standby counsel comes by. Now, he, over all these years, and he was only his attorney for maybe the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And he hadn't been able to talk to me. So he came over and just said, I know you know who I am. You know, I'm very sorry and everything. And I said, hey, we're not allowed to say anything to the jurors. But if you see the alternate jurors, let them know that they can come and hang out with us. I don't feel that they're going to approach me.
Yeah.
But I'm not allowed to approach them. And I'll tell you, I have to tell you a good jury story, though. It's a really good one. I'll come back to that because it's such a good story. But so he goes right over to the room, knocks on the door, and he says, Alisa has invited you to come sit out with her family if you would like to. Oh my gosh, they beelined it right out of that door and came and sat with me. Oh my gosh. So they were like, we were so upset that we were alternate jurors. But they go, we got the better end of this deal. We get to sit with you. We have so many questions. So we sat and it went fast, but it took 5 hours.
Okay.
But I said it probably took them 5 hours to read the jury instructions.
Probably.
So
Jeez.
Okay. So the best jury story. Okay. So before he's representing himself, that first day, we go down on a break. There's like a cafeteria area. And I'm sitting down the cafeteria area, and always the victim advocate or the domestic violence advocate is with me at all times. But pretty much the 2 of them are with me all the time together. If one needed to go to the bathroom, if I needed to go to the bathroom, one of them was with me. Like we were always the 3 of us. And it's to protect. You can't say I jury tampered. You can't say, it's a protective thing. It's also a protective thing of I have a question or I'm triggered or this or that. I just needed them with me. So day 1 of the trial, before he's representing himself, we're leaving the cafeteria and one of them says, is that one of the jurors? And I said, yeah, it is. And she goes, hang back because we can't be seen too close together. Mm-hmm. And he goes and he gets into the elevator and he's holding the elevator door for me. And I say nothing. And she says, we'll wait for the next one. And he looked and he was, and he let the door close. So he knew I'm not going to get into an elevator with any of them. Mm-hmm. So day 2, now, 8:00 in the morning, I'm on the stand, the end of the prosecutor. About 10 o'clock, he fires his attorney. Now he's representing himself and he's questioned me all day long. And then at that night, he questioned our 2 girls after me. It's 8:00. We're dismissed. I am waiting at the elevator to go down. No. They have a bailiff with them. So all 8 of them are standing there in that area and the bailiff is with them. And I come out of the room and I'm standing there and they all one by one open the door and start taking the steps. And the bailiff looks back at me and he goes, well, I guess we're all taking the steps. And I started crying and I looked over at the victim's advocate and I go, they did that for me. They just walked down 3 flights of stairs because they knew I wasn't going to get in that elevator. I wouldn't have fit with all of them anyway, but they just did that for me.
Show of solidarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome. I mean, it's amazing what small kindnesses mean in any situation, but especially, there's nothing they can do, right? There's nothing. And I think sometimes we take for granted how impactful a small kindness can be in a situation like that where you really don't have a lot of room to do much. Yeah, that's amazing. So came back, guilty on all charges?
Guilty on all 11 charges.
Good.
Yes.
Well deserved. And so he is away forever.
So this gets an even better part.
Okay.
Okay. So they have this thing called a score. They're going to determine how much time he gets based on his score. And so the judge asks, do we need to set a different date for sentencing? And both parties say yes. So they have an investigator conduct these different things to determine what his score is going to be of the different range that he can be given. What is his score on that range? Like, how likely is it going to be that he could, if he ever got paroled, reoffend or anything like that? So attempted murder in Florida has a life sentence.
Okay.
Kidnapping has a life sentence. So right there, he was looking at 3 life sentences. Then when we added up all of the other ones, it was just going to be like, okay, what extra is he going to get? So we did victim impact statements. They are also on YouTube. Long Crime recorded those. And the judge cried when my daughter gave her, my oldest daughter, who was then 20 years old at the time, and saying, you know, how did this happen? Because I was a child. And, you know, you did this because you took advantage of me being a child. And I've had to let my inner child heal and stop blaming myself for this.
Wow.
And it was just so impactful, her statement. And the judge, I mean, he said, I am not going to hold it against you for you representing yourself, but your timing of choosing to represent yourself, that was evil. That was pure evil.
Yeah. Good.
So he gave him 3 life sentences plus 224 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
How did that feel when that came down?
It to me, I was doing the math in my head.
Yeah.
What I had thought was the maximum sentence that was allowable actually isn't, because based on his score, it ended up pushing it way up higher.
Okay.
And
because are you kind of like preparing yourself to be like, okay, maybe this isn't going to be as long as I think it is, and maybe he is going to get out? Are you thinking that at all, or are you pretty certain he's done?
I was pretty certain that he was done.
Okay.
But knowing that Jeff was sitting right next to me, and it was like I had my hand on Jeff's shoulder, and I knew this man loves me so much. He is going to do everything to protect me and those kids. If this man ever gets out, I did not have fear at that point.
Good.
But I also wanted justice for my children, because I knew I was getting justice for me. It was what the kids, the crimes that were committed against my children were the minor ones. You risked their lives. You endangered them. You caused this mental harm to these children. And if they had just been like, 3 life sentences, that's it, you kind of dismiss what my kids went through. And so people who say that he ended up getting, this, it was overkill on the sentencing, to me, it definitely was not. It was justified.
Yeah.
And it gave my children justice that they deserved.
Yeah. I don't know how you can say, when you're dealing with what he did, what he continued to do, and the fact that he pushed the trial, he made those decisions. I don't know how there can be any scenario where it's too much or overkill at that point. Yeah. I mean, I think I could talk to you for 6 more hours. But I do have a couple of questions for you. So, one of the things that I have talked about quite frequently and talked about it a few times on my podcast, but I was raised in conservative Christian, it wasn't fundamentalist, but it was conservative. It was very much like you don't get divorced and you don't, whatever. And so on some scale, I understand the feeling of I can't leave. I'm not allowed to leave. There is no justifiable reason for me to leave, unless I show up with mounds of evidence to show, my church and my family and whatever, like nobody's going to believe me. First of all, what were your feelings as you were going through it? But then on the other side of it, coming out and realizing, wow, you used the word indoctrination before. I was really indoctrinated into being oppressed and abused. How do you hold the tension of that now? Because you do still have a very strong faith. How do you hold the tension of that kind of, all of that? How do you hold all of that? It's a lot.
Prior to everything happening to me, I thought there was only two reasons to be able to be granted a biblical divorce: abandonment and adultery. And to me, thinking, gosh, if there was evidence of him having an affair, I would be able to be free.
Which is just crazy.
It's crazy. And to know that any true Bible-believing church is going to recognize the 3 A's: the abandonment, the adultery, and the abuse. Because God does not call husbands to treat their wives in that way.
Yeah.
And we need to start holding the church accountable and stop putting husbands and wives into Christian counseling when wives are saying that their husbands are doing this behavior to them.
Yeah. I think it's just so, first of all, you had some parts of your story where you had a pastor or a deacon really step in, intervene for you in a very important way. And I just thought it was such a poignant thing to happen at that time, because you had kind of been turned down and kind of pushed back into your relationship. And unfortunately, that's what we see a lot with religious community in regards to marriage and in regards to women trying to leave abusive situations, is just, just be the good wife and kind of take it and, hope it gets better. And on the other side of eternity, you'll have many treasures waiting for you, whatever. And just realizing how terrible that is and how much it really strips the humanity away from women. So I thought it was really great that you actually had somebody in that community that really stepped up for you in that time. And I'm working with multiple people in domestic violence spheres to really help the church that are really interested in helping religious community in general kind of figure this out. One of the things we know is that a lot of Christian people go to their pastor for advice, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but most pastors are not trauma informed.
Yeah.
So what is kind of your take on how the church should be addressing domestic violence?
Absolutely. So now that I have finished the book, I did sign a made-for-TV movie, and I am now working on a Christian domestic abuse education.
Wow.
So it's called Dare to Believe, Domestic Abuse Recovery Education. And it's going to be a workbook of healing. It's going to be recognizing the different spokes of domestic violence, domestic abuse, and how when I saw the wheel, the domestic abuse wheel, and I saw all the different spokes in it and the financial abuse and the, submit to your husband and all of these different things, using the children, all of the ways that he was the control and power wheel, the ways he was controlling me. And here I looked at it and it mirrored this Christian submission that I had been indoctrinated with. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, this is not what I envisioned domestic violence to look like. I've never had black eyes. Even with the kidnapping and everything like that, when he held me at knife point, there was no marks on me. I mean, when I was found alive, yeah, there were marks on me, but I didn't have black eyes. It's not like he was beating me.
Right.
I did have a lot of bruising and things like that. But I mean, other than my wrist and, being covered in mud and blood and the marks on the sides of my neck, you could not really tell. Most people couldn't tell. But I think this curriculum is going to help a person who is living in it to see it clearly as I did. It'll help the pastors to see, oh my goodness, this behavior is mirroring what we are, putting out there.
Yeah.
And then also the going through and healing from that. The Lord healed me. When people saw me on the stand, they said, how does this woman have the strength to stand up and yell at this man who was cross-examining her and calling him out on his BS? And it was 6 years. Him delaying the court for 6 years gave me 6 years of healing and 6 years of me wrestling with the whole thing I went through with the Lord. And the Lord pouring all those verses back into me and saying, you know what? This is what I intended for you, Alisa.
Yeah.
The world looks at what was meant to harm you. It's not. It's to give you this strength and this power and this voice to help all of the other women who are coming behind you, who don't have all of this mountains of evidence, who didn't get to be gaslit on live stream for the world to see.
Yeah.
Because so many of us, it's happening behind closed doors and nobody can see that. And the ones that it happens to, they're forever silenced over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, your experience with the police and the legal system and, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think it is necessary to the conversation to talk about the fact that these very male-dominated professions, very imbalanced power-dominated professions like pastors, police, judges, tend to take a really almost dismissive view of domestic violence and what that means and the impact that it has. And I just recall your story about the jury selection and how prevalent it is. And, you are doing advocacy work now. I'm sure you see as much as I do, the amount of people this affects is shocking. I mean, people would be horrified if they actually realized how many people are affected by domestic violence. How did you forgive not your husband, but all of the other people that failed you?
Oh, gosh. As Christians, we're called to forgive. And I think a lot of people think that means that we forgive and we reconcile. They're two very different things. And when I was gag ordered, when I was quiet for 6 years waiting to go to trial, people asked me if I was going to sue for what they did to me. And I said, no, because if I take any form of settlement, it shuts my mouth. And so I knew early on that if there was a financial gain in this, that then it doesn't prevent this from happening again.
Yeah.
It's somebody's going to pay that financial gain. It's going to be on the backs of taxpayers to pay that financial gain to me for what I went through, but it doesn't stop it from happening to somebody else. And I said, that's where that line had to be drawn. And I'm going to give the rest over to God. And I'm going to do what God calls me to do. And then I'm going to put the rest in his hands.
Wow. I mean, it is a huge show of strength to be able to hold in tension both things, because you're not sitting here saying, oh, I'm not upset about what happened to me. I've gotten over it, whatever. But at the same time, there's no bitterness in the way that you tell your story. And I think that's remarkable. I think that shows your strength. I also think it shows the amount of work that you've put in. Which is super important, and which, you hope that victims realize that's how they heal. They have to put the work in of processing their trauma, and that's how you break the cycle and all of that fun stuff. But it's truly amazing and inspiring to hear somebody that had such a long, ongoing trauma, had her kids involved in long, ongoing trauma. And to see you here telling your story well, telling it beautifully, doing advocacy work, it's remarkable. What drove you? Did you always think you were going to tell your story, or did something kind of click for you of, now I need to tell this?
So when I was found alive, my friend Jennifer, that was supposed to come and untie me.
Yes. Oh, Jennifer.
She and I went to another friend's house. This friend had called Jennifer and said, I really want to talk to Alisa. I know she, was kind of off grid right now, in the aftermath. I had no phone or anything like that. So everybody's communicating through my mom, who wouldn't leave my side.
Yes.
Would not leave my side.
My mom would be the same way.
So we went over to this friend's house, and it was another homeschool mom. And she told me that while I was missing, she had never seen her husband so distraught, and that he was on his knees and praying like she has never seen her husband pray. And when she saw how just distraught her husband was over a woman he did not even know, he had known that she had come from an abusive relationship before him. And it hit him to his core, where he did not realize just how dangerous these situations are. And so she shared this with me. And then she shared with me Psalms 118:17. I will not die. I will live, and I will proclaim what the Lord has done. And she said that verse has just been going over and over and over in my head. And God kept telling me, you have to tell this to Alisa. You have to. And to this day, Jennifer will send me a text message all the time, and it'll just say Psalms 118:17, because she is like, Alisa, you are the one that needs to tell this story, not just for yourself, but for everybody else who doesn't have a voice, who is living in it, and for those that their story just hasn't made the news or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it gets forgotten.
It gets forgotten. They get forgotten. We look at, I look at how long ago Lacey Peterson.
Yeah.
I mean, the younger women won't know. They'll remember Cheyenne Watts. They'll remember Gabby Petito, but they don't remember that this has been going on.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't change.
No. Well, that's a great reason. I definitely got chills when you said that Psalms verse. That's incredible. So you decided to write your book.
Yes.
Which, what is it called?
It's called Tied Up. So, yeah, I was tied up. And it's always been a thing that, like, when I'm running late, I don't know if it's a Delco saying or it's just a general saying, sorry, I'm late. I got tied up, you know? And to this day, I still say it. But now, like, people are like, it's not funny. But it kind of is. And then sometimes I've added to the mix, like, traffic was torture. You know, it's just, yeah, so
Listen,
tied
you
up.
gotta laugh. If you can laugh, then that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And you just slipped in there real casual that you are having a movie made about you.
Yes.
So how did that happen?
So they reached out. They were pretty persistent because I was kind of like, I'm writing my book. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then they got on, you know, they were like, well, let us know. We're really interested in your story. And my dad got into the mix too, because then, you know, they do like Zoom calls with me and my dad. And finally I said, you know what? I really do like you guys. Okay.
Wow. So what has like production started? Is it just brand new?
Just brand new.
Okay. So I have to keep up
Yes.
to see when that comes out.
I said, you know, Netflix has been on the radar. You know, maybe they said, can we fit this all in 2 hours? I said, no, maybe be a docuseries.
Yeah, miniseries.
Yes. Well, because they did it where it can be where it's scripted and unscripted. So they could do a docuseries or they could do, you know, a multi-part.
So then would you appear in it?
If it's a docuseries, yes.
Okay.
If not, they'll have an actor play me.
Yeah. Yeah. How involved do you want to be?
Oh, I am very involved.
Okay, good. Yes. It's your story. You should be involved.
I did 48 hours.
Okay.
So they had originally told me that they were going to let me see it before it went out. And I don't like the way my daughter was portrayed.
Oh.
I said, I understand people who don't understand domestic violence and who don't understand parental alienation can look at my daughter as my daughter should have known better, or my daughter. But when you are in it and you know it and you know how manipulative these men are that do this, and women can do this too, but typically it's men who do this to their family, and, you know, their children mean nothing to them.
Yeah.
My kids meant
pawns.
nothing. Yeah.
They're pawns.
Yeah. And so it, to me, as her mom, it hurts me to see her attacked on the internet.
Yeah.
For people who not realize how close of a relationship my daughter and I have, how close a relationship we had at that moment. Mm-hmm. It took 3 weeks for him to manipulate my daughter's mind into her thinking that she was doing something that was going to help.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, really, what kid doesn't want their parents to be okay? Right. So, yeah, that's super hard.
And to think, like, people think, oh, well, you know, maybe there was something wrong with the mom, and the daughter and the mom always had an estranged relationship. It was never like that.
Right.
We did everything together.
I truly cannot overstate how quickly things can devolve with domestic violence, because it is a perfect storm in a lot of different ways. And again, I know we keep saying this, but unless you have experienced it or you're in it, it's very difficult to understand how you can be so moved in, you know, a certain direction, how you can let go of thoughts and ideas and principles that you've held your entire life and all of the sudden just be this different person. It is such a huge injustice and an incredible crime because of that, because of how insidious it is, how deep it goes, and then the ripple effects of it. I mean, I'm sure your parents have trauma. They have secondary trauma from knowing what you went through and then dealing with the aftermath, walking with you through healing and the court case and losing your children, all of it. I mean, so some of that was primary trauma for them as well. But, having the proximity to you, that's the other thing about domestic violence and, all violent crime in general. But there is not just one victim. Right. There will always be a slew of people that are affected by one person's trying to control and manipulate and abuse and hold power over another person. Seriously, I could keep talking to you. It's very easy. And you tell your story so well, but is there, we kind of covered A to Z here. Yes. Are you good with how we told your story? I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about.
I can't think of anything. Now I'm doing speaking for domestic violence organizations. I've done a couple of different speaking engagements for that. I have been asked to speak to law enforcement, which I think would be wonderful.
Yes.
To get in and allow them to see a person who's lived it and kind of what went wrong.
Yeah.
What led, how the things that happened did cause a ripple effect, that he actually ended up having more power because of these things happening.
Oh, sure. And, it just emboldens when the authority that's supposed to protect you doesn't believe you.
Yes.
Oh, great. I can just get away with it.
Right. And I really think that was used in him manipulating the children was, see, the police investigated and, they think you guys are better to be with me than with her because you're safer with me because mom's not safe now.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I got asked to speak at a law enforcement convention. The dates didn't match up for me, but I am looking forward to that in the future. And I'm really excited about the Christian curriculum. And I really think that's going to help to create support groups for victims and help educate the churches. And it's very similar to some of these already Christian curriculums out there, like divorce care. There's grief share. Celebrate Recovery, those kinds of programs out there that the church has already gotten a handle on. I think the church should be at the forefront for domestic abuse instead of just calling it domestic violence. And we're thinking it's black eyes. It's all forms of abuse.
Absolutely. And it does need to be separate.
Yes.
It cannot be lumped in with other things because it is just too big. It's too fragile. It's too much. And I can't, as much as I think that any program that people find help and support in is great. Just knowing what it takes to heal from domestic violence, domestic abuse of any kind, it just cannot be a group that is casually, you show up in and do like 12-step program work. It's just not the same type of healing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things is people, from across the world have reached out to me. So it hasn't been just in the United States because other countries saw my case and was like, how is that possible that he can represent himself? Yeah. Because in other countries they can't. So they were like mind blown by this. And so I've had women across the globe reach out to me and their stories are unbelievable that there are so many of us. Yeah. And they all want to know, how were you able to face him? How were you able to heal? And I have to tell them it's an always ongoing thing.
Yeah.
You have to always be aware and self-examine where you're at and always be working to heal more and more and more every day.
Yes.
And give yourself grace. Because there are times where I feel like I'm backslid and I have to work through something because God just brought it forward. And he only gives us what we can handle at that moment. So every now and then something else will arise and I have to take care of it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I mean, and trauma never leaves you fully. So you can heal from trauma and your life can look completely different, and good and full and, but it's still there. You can't unknow trauma. But I do think that there is a vein of empathy that opens when you go through trauma. And whether you choose to access it or not, I think it's there because you can now understand how low a person can actually get and how close to the edge, close to the end, however you want to say that, you can actually feel, and how easy it would be to just give up.
Yeah. And I say, there were times in the aftermath that I just wanted to just roll into a ball and stay into bed. I was triggered by everything. And it was, I still was in the midst of the fight for my life, to fight for my kids. That I think really pushed me, motivated me, and really set me on the path of I am going to overcome and I'm going to be strong. And then I'm going to heal and I'm going to help my kids heal.
Yeah.
And that determination. And then I'm going to show the world what healing looks like and share the journey with them.
Amazing. If there's one thing that you could just zap into people's brains about domestic violence for them to understand, what would it be?
Stop victim blaming. The victim blaming, and that goes across the board. Within churches, you can't have a divorce. Within, law enforcement, you're making this up. Friends, I lost friends through this. The way people looked at my daughter when the 48 hours came out. All of these things comes down to, as society, we need to recognize domestic violence and stop victim blaming, call it out, and hold those abusers accountable.
Yeah. And I think that's actually really interesting because I don't know what it is. And maybe it's like a defensive thing because we want to say everything except for this abuser was responsible and did heinous things and has to take accountability for all of it. They are the reason that this happened, and none of it would have happened without them. And so you can talk about all the variables all you want, but at the end of the day, the abuser is still the abuser. So it's a huge deal. And I agree. Why we persist in pulling the attention and the accountability off of the abuser and putting it on the victim. And it's that whole thing of why do we tell girls how to stop themselves from getting raped? Why don't we tell boys not to rape? Right. All put that across the board for everything.
Yes.
So, yeah, our focus is way off, but I think that's a huge thing to talk about. I feel like people don't want to talk about it, but that doesn't make it any less important to talk about. Okay, so last question, then I will let you go.
Okay.
I have a question that I ask everybody at the end of the show, which is, through the lens of your experience, what does compassion mean to you?
Compassion is just when it comes back to God. It all comes back to God. At my most lowest point, my most broken point, when I felt that everyone was against me, God was for me. And God just wrapped himself around me and held me and said, I got you. And you can do this. And just poured his word back into me. And so I pray that is the compassion then that I can then give back out to say, you know what, no matter what anyone else thinks of me, it's what God thinks of me and what he says to me.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking a lot of your time to tell your story. I truly, it's unfathomable. It's one of those stories that you wonder how people live through it. And then you realize how resilient and amazing people actually are. And, why we need to just keep celebrating stories and celebrating triumph and overcoming and the community that surrounds people when they walk through it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wanted to take a moment after this episode to talk about one of the biggest issues facing victims of domestic violence and abuse, and that is the systems that uphold the power of abusers. Many people are unaware of the prevalence of domestic violence and how systemic it can be. There are victims every day that seek help and don't get it. Sometimes it's because the people they went to for help didn't believe them. Sometimes it's because there's nothing they can do. Our laws and systems are broken. They are not built for victims, and unfortunately, it often has to be the absolute worst case scenario to get someone to pay attention or to do something. We mourn the women that are killed at the hands of their abusers, but we fail them countless times before it gets to that point. If leaving were made accessible, in other words, if we focused on prevention instead of rehabilitation, how much further along could we be? How many victims would live long enough to become survivors? If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please know that you are not alone. There is help and there is hope. Please visit the show notes for more information and resources. Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, share it on social media, and rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also support the podcast financially by going to my website, thehxpod.com, linked in the show notes, and clicking on Donate. It takes a lot of time and resources to create this podcast, so every little bit helps. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.